Good morning and welcome to our first Digi-Live this year. And what a year it has been so far. My name is Winston and I am the editor-in-chief for CDOTrends. So what's Digi-Live? Well, it's not a summit where we cover various topics, but rather a deep dive of a single topic and looking at it from two different perspectives. And that's why we will have two different panels. We will invite vendors, consultants, and users to talk about, discuss, debate, and even share about their ideas, insights, and observations. Today, we are talking about the modernization of digital cores. Here, we are going a level deeper than the application and data modernization debate that we always have, and look at the underlying foundations and building blocks again. The idea is that the old approach to creating the infrastructure needs a rethink. We need to connect with ecosystems, but we also need data to flow smoothly. So data engineers can create data workflows and data pipelines, and data science teams can get the data they need to analyze. But as you know, this is easier said than done. We have two panels, and we will start looking at it, one from an application modernization perspective, and the other from a data architecture perspective. In between, to give you a mind break, we will have Nicole and Teddy who will give us they will serenade us with some songs. This discussion is not scripted. We also want you to be part of this discussion. So if you look at your screen, you will see a Q&A button right at the bottom. There you can send in your questions and I will ask the appropriate ones to our panelists. Before we begin, I would like to thank our sponsor Equinix for making these sessions possible and also for the gems of wisdoms that they will share during each session. Right, enough of me, let's move to the panel itself. The first panel, we will be talking about the infrastructure of application modernization. We'll be talking about app modernization, and we have been talking about this for ages. But as we move to cloud native apps and use Kubernetes and containers, we're also realizing that infrastructure plays a very important role. And moving to the cloud is not that simple either. For various reasons, we are all working on hybrid cloud infrastructures. What hybrid means, it means different things to different companies. To tell us more about the value of infrastructure, we have Anshu Sharma Raja, CIO, Consumer Private and Business Banking at Standard Chartered. We have Anna Orr, Head of IT and Digital from John Swire and Sons. We have Sunil Joshi, Head of Digital and Communication Services APAC for Orange Business Services. And lastly, we have Thomas Lee, Senior Product Manager, Network Edge Services at Equinix. Thank you all for joining. Maybe we can start with the first questions. And I always like to have one that is sort of a contrarian view. Which comes first, app or infrastructure modernization? And how do you balance your resources? Because we all have limited resources when you're trying to do both. Maybe Anna, you can start the session.
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Winston. Well, this is always a difficult question in the sense of how to balance the resource. But from our experience, I think we will normally start with infrastructure, where everybody can start seeing some performance and obvious benefit from doing modernization. But apps need to go along it closely as well. I think everybody would have to face some legacy apps that you have. So we're not going to change everything in one day, but start building on smaller apps and we start some user experience design, and then that's how we go. But we always have two teams in parallel, just to make sure that both can go at the same pace. Yeah.
So Anna, that's an interesting point that you have two teams that they are working in parallel. From your position, how difficult is it to make those two teams talk, and what is the magic formula to make sure they're all fighting for the same budget and resources? So what's the magic formula to keep them in line?
Yeah, true. It is a difficult act as well, but I think it's how you build up your team or upfront, right? We really talk about, in order to do this together, that the only way to do it successfully is together. I mean, either one side get too strong is not going to be beneficial to the other side. So I think it's getting the understanding of the priorities, and we always have team discussion in terms of setting priorities, and then before we go off on the project. So I think that's a very good way in terms of getting understanding of each other. But of course, there are times that we need to fight for budget. So hopefully our management will support that as well when we need to. Yeah.
Thank you. And Anshu, from Standard Chartered perspective, I mean, banks have always been looking forward. They've always been big investors of apps and infrastructure, even before times of cloud. It's not as if it is something new. It's just that there are a lot of other competitors who are coming into the field, and you have to move a lot more faster. So from your perspective, how do you streamline your teams between app and infrastructure so that they talk the same language and they are moving at the same velocity or maybe faster than the market?
Good question, very good question. And again, this is an evolving space. Earlier on, it was, infrastructure was sort of, I wouldn't call it the laggard, but it was all very app driven, right? Because again, banking is about what is in the hands of the customers. From the business, from the investments, it was all about, just getting the next feature out from a competitive market perspective as well. The infrastructure sometimes gets forgotten. And that's the role of us technologists and people sitting at that seat to make sure that infrastructure also moves at the same pace. Otherwise, you will hit into roadblocks that your infrastructure will not be able to scale as much as you want your applications to scale. So infrastructure is equally important to move at that pace. Yes, there are very calculated calls that sometimes need to be made. The whole cloud philosophy has really evolved over time. Earlier on, that was everybody wanted to get on the bandwagon of cloud. But now you realize, especially, as a bank, you also have to demonstrate a lot of stringent resiliency standards, which sometimes the cloud providers are able to, and sometimes they're not able to, honestly. So cloud cannot be the answer for everything. And it has to be a very conscious decision on what value proposition does cloud bring and what we want to leverage. So for example, in Standard Chartered, we created this cloud value framework, which is really evaluating applications against the value that cloud brings to them. Either it's in terms of cost, either it's in terms of increased resiliency, which otherwise, our on-premise infrastructure would not be able to provide, or increased cyber posturing, and in the fact that you're always kind of evergreen on the cloud. You're not creating a technical debt which you otherwise have in your current estate. So yeah, I mean, again, there is no one formula, but the point is that infrastructure also needs to move at the same pace. Otherwise, the application modernization is not complete.
Thanks, Anshu. And Sunil, I see your hand raised. Let me ask one other question to Anshu before I come to you. Anshu, you have an interesting portfolio in terms of you are a CIO of a consumer, private, and business banking. And in my mind, that is three different businesses with three different ideas, what cloud and apps. How do you actually balance it? Because we know there's a lot of people pulling at different directions. Consumers have one way of looking at cloud apps. Private is obviously about face-to-face and how you're going to empower them. And you have business banking who are now becoming more and more consumer-driven, consumer-like. So how do you actually balance that?
Correct. No, again, very, very nuanced, absolutely. But having a clear business strategy about, how do you want to serve these three completely different segments of our clients. So we are very clear that our consumer bank is more and more getting more towards digital and self-service. So, the application footprint, the underlying infrastructure needs to kind of, scale to that level. The second is, of course, our wealth and private business, which is, like you said, it is still a very advisory focused, very face-to-face. But again, converging all our platforms, getting into a simplified mode so that one platform can actually serve, serve the needs. You don't have to have 8, 9, 10, or 20 in some cases to serve that. So basically providing a single view of the client. And then the third is, of course, business banking, which is, or, small and medium enterprises, which is a play between the consumer and the corporate bank. So again, in that sense, also digitizing the onboarding experience, digitizing the credit decisioning for SME customers, etc. So there is a digital underpinning of each of these segments, but to what extent and how do we deploy these is definitely a very nuanced approach for each of the market segments.
Thank you, Anshu. Sunil, back to you. Hopefully I did not disrupt your train of thought, but go ahead, Sunil.
No, you didn't. I was just complimenting Anna and Anshu. And Anshu, being a Stanchart customer, I absolutely agree that giving the power to the customer makes a lot of difference in how we engage with the bank, right? But I think to your question, Winston, and thank you for having me on this panel, it's not an either or between application and infrastructure, it's an and, because they actually are interlinked, as Anna and Anshu both pointed out. And I think the prioritization of both of these are driven by the business problem. So what it forces us as technology leaders, as well as people who engage with technology, is it's almost like a triangle, right? The business decides what the priorities are, the business problems are. Then the application looks at how we're going to solve that. The underlying infrastructure has to work in tandem. So in a way, it forces the triage of the teams to know what business problem you're fixing, what's the best option from an application, and how best is that application going to perform, whether it's an on-prem or a cloud or a hybrid infrastructure. And then you have the fourth dimension, which is the security layer, because the moment you get out of your prem, that opens up everything, right? And especially for banks, and I know Stanchart has a very strong, stringent policy on security, you have to add that fourth dimension in any decision you make, which adds the complexity. And I think simplicity is the greatest complexity in technology nowadays.
You're so true. So well said.
Yes.
Thomas, from your perspective, Sunil has mentioned simplicity is the most difficult part about IT. How is Equinix working to actually drive this simplicity so that people actually can make decisions quickly to what they really need, rather than trying to go through the different propositions from?
Well, yeah. So we provide the necessary infrastructure. So we provide a lot of visibilities, and also we have a group of very well trained architects and solutions consultants that help our customers navigate through this. So yeah, I agree with a lot what we've been just said, right? So it's both important in terms of application modernization and application and the infrastructures, and yeah, and a lot of times it depends on where you are at the digital transformation journey, right? So if you are still stuck with an old MPLS network that wasn't designed for cloud, but you're trying to move things to the cloud, then certainly you need to look after the infrastructures, okay, right? So I think a lot of it's the communications between different stakeholders, getting the requirements, and yeah, we at Equinix work as a lot of time we work as advisors, because we are a vendor neutral platform, and a lot of customers trust us providing a neutral view as well. And if necessary, we're pulling all the different partners from different sectors and with different capability, and yeah, to join it as an ecosystem and help our customers and yeah, and ourselves sometimes. Yeah.
Thank you, Thomas. I just wanted to highlight, you mentioned helping and having a more advisory perspective. And I think one of the realizations that everybody can agree is we can't do everything alone. There is no such thing as an island nowadays when it comes to doing business. How important is that ecosystem, building that ecosystem to support customers? And I will then move to later on to Sunil, how consulting agencies are actually working with customers to actually share insights between customers so that they can get their jobs or their stuff done. Thomas, maybe you can start.
Yeah, I think it's very important, and well established ecosystem is really a key to any company's success, because I agree with you, like no one party knows all right? Everyone is an expert in a different field, and when you gather these different people, you have the power, right? That you have the advantage. And one thing to consider is you need to find a proper platform where you can connect to these ecosystem. Not every ecosystem is made the same, so you have to select carefully. Yeah.
Thanks, Thomas. Sunil, not all ecosystems are equal. So how do you create the right ecosystem? How do you advise people like Anshu and Anna to actually build or work with the right ecosystems? Sometimes they might even have a different idea that you have to steer them in the right fit. So how do you actually do that?
And I think if I could even just give the Orange business example, traditionally we're a telco, everybody seems to give us connectivity, but now we've gone to a point as of the year that just finished in APAC, it's more than 60% of our revenues are coming from digital services, and only 40 is coming from connectivity, traditional, to Thomas's point of MPLS, right? And that's changing into a software-defined world. Yeah. In order for us to move, and we have moved as an integrator with a breadth of services, including cloud, and we work with Equinix as a partner, and we serve customers like StanChart. So it's almost like that triage of that ecosystem. I love the whiteboard, and the team does too, because that's where you put the problem on the whiteboard. You actually work with the customer and look at what do you have, what are the possible options, and there is no single answer that'll come out. There'll be options. So it's all about choices that you have and the options you take, and then the result is consequences. Sometimes priorities is around service orientation and speed and agility. Sometimes the orientation is around cost and optimization of cost. And sometimes it's about regulatory risk, privacy, compliance related matters. And dependent upon those priorities, we work with partners and what we have ourselves. It's essential. You can't do it in a closed box environment as done in the past. And the customers expect us to be the experts in technology and advise them to, here's the options, here's what works, here's what didn't work. What would you like to do, customer, and where would you like to go? And that you arrive hopefully at a common point. Then obviously you have to follow the rest of the procurement processes, which governance and the operating frameworks require them to do. But being understanding the customer's issues, presenting a solution independently that says here are your options, but being the integrator consultant that can help guide them is the best way to go today, because then the customer also knows you're in the water with me, and the only way you know how deep the water is when you come in the water yourself. Otherwise, you think it's pretty shallow.
Okay, good
So
point.
true.
Thomas, you're going to add something?
Yeah, I think it's so true. Yeah. So, and sometimes the customers rely on us so a lot, because it's really complex, the process. Yeah, takes a lot of effort.
Anshu, I see your hands raised. Go ahead, Anshu.
Yeah, thank. I just wanted to add another perspective from the other side of the table, right? Like Sunil said, that simplicity or simplification is the biggest complexity, right? What we all are looking for, and yes, we are also, providers to our own customers, and while we are customers to, so the whole ecosystem is such. But what we are looking for is to simplify, right? And especially even from service providers and so on, locking us or locking into a tool or a platform is not the solution, right? Because the tools and platforms come and go. We all know that story, right? That, it's a 3 to 5 year journey. And then you again, kind of start thinking of what next, and, how do I manage, contain it, et cetera, et cetera. But really having a jointed up strategy of how to keep it simple from a perspective of, not just adoption, right? Not the short-term gains that you get, but also long-term total cost of ownership, total cost of maintenance, total cost of support, and just this, from those aspects is very, very important. And I think that those conversations become a game changer, right? Whether you're trying to just sell up a platform or a solution or or a new proposition, versus you're really kind of co-creating and really warning. And that's where we rely on our partners, because they see the industry from a very different lens and a very wide lens, if you will, right? So also kind of being the experts in kind of saying that yes, you go on this journey, but beware, these are the pitfalls. So that's the trust that kind of then it builds.
Thank you, Anshu. That was good points. But I wanted to go on to the earlier point that you made about technical debt. And I wanted to look at it from a a different perspective. Now, everybody's been talking about technical debt. It's there. You have to deal with it. It's not going to run away, and you can't forget about it. It might even bite you if you do. But the issue here is when we talk about app modernization, often the idea is you build and fail fast. Kind of mentality seeps in so that you can actually build fast. But you can't really do that with infrastructure. There's no such thing as failure, because failure with an infrastructure is a big issue. So how do you actually align the mindset when you have one team that wants to experiment and do things as fast as possible? There is another team that is said, hey, these are the guardrails, and can you temper it down and let's look at it from a holistic perspective. How do you adjust the speed from your perspective?
Look, I think, just to first of all, I'll disagree with you a little bit, because I don't think even in the application space, there is an opportunity to fail, build and then fail fast, right? It also depends on what you are building. If I'm building a new core banking or a cards platform or a new lending platform, I cannot fail fast. I will need to be really, really prepared, really have done a whole lot of design work and pilot work, etc., before we even embark on that journey, because the investments are very, very significant, when you kind of get on with the journey of any platformization, right? Versus, yes, you're building a small app, utilities for some markets, connectors to kind of, open banking connectors and so on. Yes, you could, absolutely. It's the same view with the infrastructure. Right? If you are really modernizing a data center, you can't be saying that I'll modernize this little corner and then see how it goes, and then we'll figure it out. No, absolutely not. So you really have to front load your journey into a lot of deliberate thinking, and that's where, to my earlier point, collaborating with partners that can take you on with that journey. Yes, there is also opportunities to try a few things out. I mean, there are things we still do with things like Raspberry Pis and so on to kind of, just see, how much, certain things will scale or not, etc. We also know what's happening in the world of storage. Storage has become cheaper and cheaper. So, really changing our philosophy on how we look at archivals and so on. So all of that can be done. But yes, it's the same philosophy we need to apply. I think the mindset so far, we've treated infrastructure in a very different manner, right? And the fact that, the technical debt also comes from you're not patching it on time, you're not really upgrading your products or versions and solutions on time. Only when some event happens, then everybody wakes up saying that, yes, we need to do that. So I think, having the safety and soundness of your infrastructure as an ongoing program, because like software, infrastructure is also a living thing. It's not like, just shut in the data centers. You will need to keep that healthy as well.
Thank you, Anshu. Anna, I see your hands, but just before I go, I just want to make a quick announcement. For those who are joining us, please do send in your questions. We'd love to hear from you, and we love you to join this discussion itself. Any questions that you have on app modernization and is in relation to infrastructure, we are happy to take on. Anna.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I can't agree more about there's a lot of build up that we always have to do before it becomes a stable platform and usable platform. But there's also that pressure of making sure that things come out fast and quick. And although we say fail fast, right? But actually no one allows you to fail. But I think a very important point though is to always include our end users together in the discussion, to really think about which are the part that we could play a bit more and which are the part that there's absolutely no room for quick implementation. So I think it's with that understanding where we could then all together build a journey. And when things happen, we are all more prepared for it. And having the end game in mind really help us divide up the work. And instead of saying I need to protect infrastructure or the app modernization, then we can have the same goal to work out that journey. And I find that really useful because of the understanding between the users and how IT understand them, what's their real priority. So yeah, that would really help. Yeah.
Thank you, Anna. Sunil, you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I was going to say that, if you look at pre-pandemic, TechTarget did a survey about 3,500 IT users. The number one area of focus was modernization of the infrastructure. COVID came upon us. Then everybody had to shift into digital initiatives to drive the digital journey, whether it's the remote workforce that was now not able to come, or the customers who are looking for same service, but now not able to visit you either. So the business model changed. What that did was prioritized all of the customers to look at how do I bridge the two? As they looked at that, there was some areas of pileup of technological debt that does happen in that case because you work off the priorities. And like you said, and I think Anshu said, you can't do everything one shot, but you're also trying to change the wheels of the car while the car is moving. And that's the most difficult balance to get. Now, post-pandemic, as we're coming out of it, the hybrid workforce, the different ways that the customers want to be, are again shifting focus of the business, for which the technology teams, app and infrastructure, have to realign their focus on, now what do I have and what parts are likely to break, and how do I get more proactive to be able to focus on these while still improving on stuff that I did during my digital initiative. So that's now taking a bigger focus with customers, and all of that balancing within the dollar budget that everybody has the envelope to play within, and that envelope keeps shrinking, right? So how do you squeeze more out of the same amount or less that you have access to? And I think that's the priorities or the balancing act that's a tough one. It's not an easy one. And so people like us and Equinix, when you work alongside the customers, you do get an understanding of, what is trying to be done, what are the call it the commercial envelope that you have to work within, because you can give them a Lamborghini solution, but it's not practical. But you don't give a cheap and cheerful one because that's not sustainable. To Anshu's point, you do want to have an ongoing flexibility to be able to manage both what you're running and how you can change it while you're running it.
Good point. Thomas, do you want to add on to that?
Yes, and yeah, I totally agree. We should bring in the users early to because it's all about priorities, right? So there's so many things you want to do, but so little time. And but one thing is cloud services and virtualization services are getting more mature now, and a lot of a lot of these services also offer trials and also helps you try out your new ideas very quickly. So I think that is one thing that is that really can help to identify your to try new things. Yeah.
Thank you, Thomas. We have one question coming through the Q&A. We have James who's asking, what is the panel's view of the single biggest drivers of increasing in demand in infrastructure, as well as gains of efficiency in demand for infrastructure? I'm just wanting to see, maybe Sunil, we can start the ball rolling with just giving your perspective of this.
Yeah, I think the single biggest driver is the customer's customer, right? Who are continuing to change their demands to the business itself, which then looks at what do we have to prioritize in the context of service levels. And that service level could be performance, could be as simple as that, or it could actually be a tweak in an application, and then, or it could be a full-blown re-architecture of an application to suit a far greater need, right? So I think it's horses for courses, and it'll differ by the organization and the journey in which it's at for its digital transformation. But clearly, all digital transformation initiatives are taking priority because that is driving efficiency. And when you peel that, there is an orchestration layer, I'll call it an automation layer, which becomes important. Then looking at what do I have, legacy, which is on-prem, can go to cloud or not? What do I have that a cloud native app, and what's in between? Because we did have a big shift going to, oh, cloud's going to save us a lot of money, right? Because we go on-prem to cloud. That view of saving money, then the shadow IT came into play, where every person could use their credit card and start consuming services on cloud. Then obviously you're having another reassessment happening, saying on-prem, private, public, hybrid, back into what do I do to further optimize my costs? So it's almost like a circle coming in of reassessment. And to Anna's and Anshu's point, it's a continuum. It's not a start-finish.
Good points. Anshu, what about yourself? How do you see this question? I think basically they are looking at whether is it a demand for actual infrastructure like data centers, bandwidth, or are people asking more and more for more efficiency from the infrastructure, whatever that infrastructure is?
I think it's a bit of both, right? I will tackle this from two lenses. One is, of course, from a customer's perspective as well. Things have gone digital, but they're not 100% digital. So you still run a hybrid, in a lot of cases. And second, even within the organizations, every organization that I know, small, large, size doesn't matter, has gone hybrid again. So, earlier when you didn't have, so now there are also times when, infrastructure or the network bandwidth from within the organization or within the office premises is a poorer experience than what people have back in their homes. So, there is a real upsurge of demand coming internally as well as externally. So that has definitely caused that. It also needs, the applications need to rebalance, right? And these applications could also be internal applications that people access from within the organization. They have to scale up from a very different perspective. They have to really think about how they are being deployed and being accessed. To also, of course, the applications and the platforms that service our customers.
Good. And go ahead, Sunil, you had a point.
Yeah, I was just going to add on to Anshu's point, right? So demand, often the first attempt is, how can I get more for the same, or if not less? Then the changing demand of other applications that then require, like when you do an iOS upgrade, dare I say, right? It needs more memory, it needs more grant, then they force you to go for a bigger phone. No, I'm not bagging Apple, but when you add more feature functions and capability, it does have an impact on the underlying infrastructure, and you have to carry that along so that the performance to the end user doesn't get impacted.
Anna, what were your thoughts from your experience?
Yes, yeah, thank you for that. I think for me, is the key driver would be how would we get free flow of information, being sensitive or not, around the network. So it could be because of capacity, but it's how we divide that up safely and people get access to what they want. Simply because of the a few drivers that you've all spoken about, because now we work everywhere, anywhere, anytime. So how do you make sure that's still being supported? The cost side, yes, I agree. We want to all contain that. But I think to me, that's probably a secondary point. But from a user perspective, right? How can I get what I want? Because we used to work together in one place. Yeah, sometimes it's much easier in that sense, but now it's how do we enable it globally and still in a safe manner?
Okay, there's a second question in the Q&A session, but let me reframe that question. I want to see how we all know that when you come to a cloud or managing a hybrid infrastructure, sometimes costs can get out of hand, especially when egress costs are always increasing and people are wondering or facing sticker shocks when they see the bill at the end of the month. So I'm just wondering, now we have been talking about this for like 2 years since we have been cloudifying our infrastructure as fast as possible. What are the best practices? How do you actually fine-tune your cost model so that you can meet the demands of cloud? Maybe Thomas, you can start because you're probably facing that sticker shock right up front.
Yes, actually allow me to do some advertising here because we do offer solutions that help customers like handle these egress charges. Right? Just simply using our interconnection service really can help not just performance-wise, but also cost-wise, because you no longer need to retrieve your data through the internet where they charge you the huge amounts of money. So there are plenty of solutions out there. So we are not just looking in a way; we are actually providing these services. Already. Yeah.
Anshu, your thoughts, your best practices, insights, lessons?
Yeah, our best practices or the lessons rather has been that we've now started to embed finance folks into our technology teams, by way of FinOps. Because yes, we went through this on one side, we were just ramping it up on the cloud, and then we realized that we also need to refactor applications, right? It just can't be a straight lift and shift from the way you were deploying it in on-prem. The kind of infrastructure sizing that was done for on-prem, etc., has to be done differently or thought differently for the cloud. So that's that's a lesson learned. But yes, definitely embedding FinOps in the whole scheme of things, so that we don't review it. We review it much more frequently, and actually creating a real transparency on consumption patterns and so on. So yeah, I mean, this is. Are we completely over the hill? No, but these are some of the things that we've actually started to do.
Anshu, I just wanted to pick your brains on that one point, the way you look at FinOps embedding finance folks. I'm just wondering also, do you have to also relook or rethink the way procurement happens when it comes to IT? Because you have a way of doing procurement and it has shifted, but do we have to rethink the way we do procurement when it comes to cloud infrastructure?
Definitely, right? I mean, just the way the applications have been designed, we are rethinking of how we architect our applications. I think there has to be, some transformation in the way we think of procurement, right? Because I'll give you an example. Suppose 2023 we embark on a large platform modernization, etc. The business case typically is built for 3 to 5 years, payback times, and so on. We all know the drill. But a lot can change in the next 2 to 3 years from an infrastructure perspective, right? So what you procured, or what you thought you will procure, can also change, and it has happened to us. It has absolutely happened because business strategy can change. Things like COVID happened, and in certain cases we accelerated. In certain cases we actually stopped certain things. But here we are, from a procurement perspective, we've already committed, we've already locked in. So I think it has to be from both the ends. The people who are seeking this procurement and the ones that are offering it as well. It has to be a lot more flexibility and the same flexible thinking coming in as well.
Thank you, Anshu. Anna, what about your side, from your end?
Yeah, on procurement, definitely it makes us rethink a bit, not just on the procurement discussion, but also on the costing, right? On how does it fare out in our book. As we all know, we now all going to more subscription based, right? So the costing side actually change quite a bit in terms of how we allocate. But what we're beginning to adopt a bit more is always kind of a POC trial period, like a bit longer than we usually do, so that we get our understanding better before we go into a longer term contract or so. So that's helping a bit, but of course, from a price negotiation perspective, it might be better if we lock in further. But what we found is that, as Anshu has said, things just change so quickly now. So sometimes it may be more beneficial if we do have a start small and then decided how to go on. And same way as our cloud. Beginning, we also to find that some applications are actually better to stay on premise. So it may be also lucky that we didn't jump into it 100% right away.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna. And I'll give it to Sunil first because he raised his hand first.
That's it. I think from a procurement standpoint, it's also what you're buying, right? If it's commodity, then you can run a regimented process and go, L1, T1, whichever works, you go through the process. But where it has a strategic implication and a long-term implication, to Anna and Anshu's point, then you want to build a framework of a partnership. And often procurement that run a regimented process, the partnership angle gets lost. Because when you run a partnership model, then you're in it together. But when you run an RFP, regimented process, then it's you said this and you will do X and that. The market changes, right? The environment changes over a period of time. So you need to have a flexibility rather than a concrete house, a wooden house, so that it can work alongside a longer duration in an element of trust and underlying understanding that both sides could have issues. Let's work. What's the best way to work it out?
Anshu, you.
I think Sunil said what I had on my mind, absolutely, and also following up on Anna's point, right? Because what today's procurement is thinking about getting bulk, deals or bulk discount, and those are the premise of negotiation. I think that needs to absolutely change. That needs to change. Yeah.
Let me go to. We have coming close to our end of our discussion. Again, to everyone beaming in, please do add your questions. We are happy to take on your questions. And I think it has been a lively discussion so far. Now, one of the areas that we love to talk about, but there's never seems to be a solution, is talent shortage. But when it comes to app modernization, I feel, and infrastructure modernization, when you're trying to do that, I think where are the talent shortages? What is the specific talent we are looking for, but it's not available in the market? Maybe Anna, you can highlight where the shortage is.
Yes. Yeah, so constantly we are having like 20-25% shortage in our workforce, and no matter how you recruit, it's still in shortage. But on an app modernization perspective, I guess there are many new tools that comes out all the time. It's how do we quickly get to know which one is the one that we could actually stay on with it and continue to use it. Because at the end of the day, from an enterprise perspective, you need that stability, right, and usability. So getting to the tools to know which one to choose is already an skill. But beyond the technical know-how, I think the skills that we needed most is the kind of the end-to-end process that we talk about. So yes, you can do this particularly well, but how do I build that in hybrid with all the legacy processes that we still have and will stay on? So is that understanding of what would give a good user experience while you are in the middle of moving, but still can help us move along, will be a skill that we really hope that we can get more. Yeah.
Anshu, what about you? Where do you see the gaps are when it comes to talent, especially when you talk about app and infrastructure modernization?
Yeah, two things I would say to my mind, right? The application developers today, they don't really want to know about infrastructure, but they should, right? Because their app is as good as, the way it gets deployed, and they should. So I think today's I think that would be my advice and guidance to people, they need to understand how their application behaves, performs on cloud versus, on-prem and so on. You really, really need to understand that. You can't really abstract yourself away from, how the application behaves. I started my career in the days of C and C++, and fixing memory leaks and fixing, those kind of bugs was, I spent 80% of my time doing that than building feature functionality. I mean, that was the easier part, right? That you could get the feature working, but to actually scale the app and to make that work and to find that, where it was really chewing all the memory or whatever available CPU performance. But anyway, it's the same concept today, but obviously in a different construct. So that's one. The second thing is learnability, right? I think, today yes, it is hard to find talent, but it is also even harder to find, people who are not just kind of saying, I know these tool set, because the tool set of today is gone in 3 years' time, right? So if you're saying that I'm a mobile developer and I know Flutter, so big deal, right? You can learn Flutter in couple of weeks' time, honestly. But it's that learnability, right? It's that learnability. I think that's the fundamental thing for me, particularly with respect to talent.
Sunil, learnability, how do you actually look for learnability, especially when you're actually helping other organizations to meet? I mean, the talent shortages will be a bit more acute from your end.
It is definitely. And I think that's a very good question. I mean, the two bits of it, we have an existing talent pool. So the question of the existing is how many of the existing can you skill up, and how many of them want to skill up? And then there'll be some that will not skill up, but there also are the experts of your legacy app. So in a way, it's a fine balance of how do you keep the people that are keeping the engine running, but how are you also bringing on talent that have skills for internal talent to have skills for the future applications. Then the third dimension is the newer platforms. Like there are a lot of low-code platforms that are coming up, right? And to Anshu's point, C++, I came in Fortran times, right? So that was a lot earlier, but that was tough as ever. But when you look at low-code platforms, you don't need to have that much of depth. So what it does is allows people to broaden their skill set and knowledge base to multi-application or platforms. Then the third dimension, you'll never have enough internally. Then we also rely on partners who can bring in the skill sets because the business demand still stays. So it's about here as well, getting the right balance of what do I have internally, what can I skill up, what do I have that I can use as strategic partners for giving me the skills or the outcomes from those skills that I'm looking for, depending on my control choice, right? Then on the back of that, delivering an end outcome. So wrapping that around means that we still have to deliver end outcomes. We have quite a few customers that are now leveraging Orange Business for filling their skills void because that job is still required to be done, and they look at it as a trusted partner who can work with them on ground in an envelope of confidentiality and security as well.
Now, the rumor is in the industry is that ChatGPT is supposed to improve your learnability. That's not going to be today's discussion, so that's fine. I think I will invite Thomas now, because Thomas has a short presentation, and he'll probably also look at the key points that we raised during the discussion, and he will also highlight some of the solutions that you have. Go ahead, Thomas.
Yes. Before I start, I just want to make sure everyone can see my slides. Is it looking okay?
Good. Looks good.
Great. Okay. So yeah, I really want to introduce you to Platform Equinix because I think a lot of people know Equinix as a data center service provider. And that is absolutely correct, okay? But I have a more accurate description of who we are today. So Equinix is the world's digital infrastructure company, and we offer our customer unique platform experience, okay? So this platform we offer consists of data center services, interconnection service, and also digital infrastructure services. And we deliver them through software to help companies like you build their foundational infrastructures. And this platform is unique because it's allowed global ecosystem of partners and customers across clouds, networking systems to connect to one another and do business together. And most impressive part is that this infrastructure can be assembled and deployed in terms of minutes. There's no waiting, so it's not months. Okay, and thousands of companies have already successfully built and modernized their applications and their infrastructure on Platform Equinix with us and with our partners. At Equinix, we believe the network and ecosystem is the foundation of your architecture. Okay, over the years, we have observed many forward-thinking companies, and we have found that they actually all follow a very consistent pattern of success. We actually here at Equinix call it IOA, interconnections oriented architecture. So what this is, it is not actually any new concept at all. Okay, in fact, it is the exact topology used by many telcos and service providers to scale the internet in the last couple of decades. Okay, the concept is simple, but it's very effective. So instead of the traditional centralized setup, they use interconnections to build a distributed network, which bring them closer to their partners and customers, really bringing them closer to where all businesses and all these business actions are taking place. So yeah, it is this proximity that enhances customer experience. And we have seen plenty of examples during the pandemic that a lot of companies that adopted these principles were able to quickly maneuver, overcome challenges such as what we just mentioned, remote working, disrupted supply chains. Okay, but but you might think, why choose Equinix to build these infrastructures in the first place, right? So, well, you choose Equinix because we are able to place infrastructures where you need it. Okay. Currently, we have over 240 data centers around the world. They're all powered by renewable energies, and we have the best uptime. We have a record of 5 nines, and they are very secure. So anywhere you want, we can provide it. Okay. And it's Equinix because we connect to everything you need to connect. Okay. Well, we mentioned a lot of times the ecosystem. Okay, your infrastructure is only as good as the ecosystem that it is connected to. So, Platform Equinix is now currently the largest global industry ecosystem. We have over 10,000 companies, over 1,800 competing networks, and more than 3,000 clouds and IT service providers that you can connect to instantly, right? And for example, Orange is one of our partners. Okay. And also we host the largest number of cloud on-prem on our platform. Actually, it's 3 times larger than our nearest competitor. That is the closest you can get to any cloud service to reduce latency and improve performance. Also, we offer solutions that help you with the egress costs. And people choose Equinix because we help seize opportunities. We have a full range of digital services ready to offer agility, speed, and confidence. Our digital services support a complete virtual deployment for compute, networking, and storage requirements. Okay. Our portfolio portfolio includes a software-defined interconnection service called Equinix Fabric, a bare metal service called Equinix Metal, and a VNF as a service called Network Edge. Okay, so these services are all OpEx based. Okay, they're all on-demand service. We offer free trials, and there are no long binding contracts to sign. Ordering and implementation is just a few clicks away through our portal. It's all self-service, so simply just select, deploy, and connect. Okay. The beauty is you no longer need to ship equipment to our data centers in order to be at Equinix. So everything is available virtually and instantly. And we work with all the market-leading technologies partners that you are already familiar with, such as Cisco, Fortinet, VMware, Dell, or you name it, right? So there's no need to reskill your teams to run your infrastructure on Equinix especially with talent shortage at the moment, right? This is a quick introduction to our digital platform, okay? And to summarize the benefits, Equinix gives you a scalable architecture that reduce to time to market. We help reduce costs. We optimize your applications, and it will future-proof your business. So with that, I'll pass the time back to Winston. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas, and thanks for the quick introductions. Now, I would like to actually thank everyone, Anshu, Anna, Sunil, and Thomas, yourself, for actually joining this discussion. We had a great discussion and hope we can continue this discussion offline in other forms. But again, thank you for your time. And for those online, please do stay on. We are going to be talking about data architectures next.